The Boy Who Reversed Himself by William Sleator. 12. Oh, what do I see? A voice like many whispers, echoing out of a cave. Oh, I almost trod upon them. Oh, cunning creatures. Shadows swooped and swelled. A withered, veiny donut encircled me in a rush of velvet curtains. Squeezing gently, I screamed and squirmed in its grasp and managed to get a glimpse of Pete screaming too, surrounded by another gnarled inner tube of flesh. My stomach dropped as we were lifted in a breathless rush, lifted past a snout-like bloating mass that suddenly sank in upon itself into 3 deep, crusted pits. Pete blurred out of focus and vanished, and then a wrinkled beach ball of an eye swam toward me, yellow-veined with a purple iris. An isolated globe independent of any face, hanging suspended in the dancing light. We didn't seem to be at home. Trod upon what, elephant-legged one? The eye shrank to a point and vanished. They are mine. I found them first. They are mine, mine, mine. The intensity of the voices inside my head numbed me to everything else. I thought of a story I had heard about a soldier forgetting he had a toothache when his leg is blown off. I could actually bear to watch as a pair of lips, like writhing reptiles, swept past in a jutting prominence with sparse whiskers that brushed against my face, a sideways glimpse of hanging waters, like great swags and draperies of skin, and I was whisked down Anna and around and pressed against something like fabric. Show me what you have found. Take your hands from behind you. They are mine. I will not let you take them from me. And there was Pete, close beside me again, his head poking out from between a grimy scimitar of fingernail and a ridge of folded knuckle. And even though I could see inside his head, it was a relief to look at something that was not a shifting cross-section, but an easily identifiable whole. He looked sick. Did I say I would take them from you, insect brain? I only said I wanted to see them. I do not trust you. Trust him, I felt like screaming. No wonder Pete looked sick. Aside from everything else, the creature's grip around our necks was not particularly gentle. Of course you can trust me, and in any case, you will have to show me sometime, so do it now. What will you promise me if I do? Pete, I called out softly. Pete, are you hurt or anything? Can you hear me? He coughed and his eyes flickered open. Laura? He gasped. Oh, you are there. He swallowed with difficulty. I'm choking, but the worst part is, I think I went psycho. Too much to take. No, Pete, I tried to tell you this is what they look like to us. See why I didn't want to get near them? Why should I promise you anything? They are probably only a pair of brain-damaged field vermin. Laughter, like serenading chainsaws. No, Ramoon. They are marvelous and amazing. They are fantastic beyond your imagination, but they are also delicate, unearthly, easily vanishing. If I were to toss them aside, we might never find them. No, you must promise. If you're trying to say I told you so, you might as well shut up, Pete managed to say. This is all your fault. Can't you see that I'm trying to help you, you jerk? I shouted at him. You're not crazy. If we could see them all at once, they might not look that different from people. Promise what, then? That you will not take them from me? That you will never, ever tell anyone else about them, and that you will stay with me for another season? A sense of hesitation, doubt. You ask many promises, Gigigi. I was expecting only one. Are they worth so much, then? That is what I ask, or you will never see them. Their conversation, though alien and voiceless, was beginning to sound familiar somehow. Do you promise? Yes, I promise. You must take my hand. All right, here, I take your hand. I wondered, vaguely, how this was possible, since this creature was still holding us both, with both hands behind its back. Let the promise be made, then. And now, behold them. More bewildering shapes rushing by, and then, the blissful relief of being released, set down upon some rough surface, Pete beside me. We both gasped, staggering a little, and then we fell toward one another, clinging together. No, do not blend and hide. Let Ramoon see you. We sprang away from each other before the gnarled blob swimming towards us could push us apart, though I did not let go of Pete's hand. For once, Gigi, you amaze me. All that you said about them was true. Incredible gossamer creatures. They are indeed beings out of legends. 6 spherical, disembodied eyes floated in the flickering light. They were arranged in 2 triangular groupings of 3, each group containing 1 purple, 1 yellow, and 1 green iris, and I knew from the conversation that there were only 2 creatures here. I pulled Pete's head over so he'd see the same section of space. You see what I see, Pete? 6 eyes? Uh-huh, he nodded miserably. I guess they're not very much like people after all. If I could not see them, I would not believe they could exist. Transparent creatures. I have never conceived of such a thing. Rather a primitive and peculiar anomaly, I must say. Do not insult them, do not hurt their feelings, or I will take them away. Primitive life forms do not have feelings, Gigigi, you ass. And you cannot deny that their anatomy is strange. You are overprotective of them, perhaps, because of your own, shall we say, anatomical peculiarities. Do not keep insulting me, Ramoon. That is another promise we must make. I turned toward Pete. God, I wish they'd stop bickering all the time. They are indeed effervescent, vanishing. We must keep them safe, so they will not slip away, escape from us. What do you mean by safe, Ramoon? One set of eyes shrank away and vanished. Safe. The cage I made when you found that wounded bat you made such a stupid fuss about. I told you it would die, but perhaps making that cage was not such a waste of time after all. The other eyes were swallowed by a tangled gray mat, a cottage thatched with human hair that billowed out into nowhere. But to put them in a cage, like animals? But they are animals, Gigigi. You sentimental fool. Dim, blurred shapes ballooned and separated and fused in the distance amid crashes and thumps. Ah, there it is. I stepped backward into warm slime. I jumped away with a cry of disgust, slipped and fell, dragging Pete down with me. There you are in the head drippings. Hungry, that is, my little ones. And before we could do anything else, we were pulled apart and lifted again. Quickly, Kikiki, in here. A click, a squeal of hinges, and we landed on fuzzy softness. A dark grid of diamond shapes changing to squares swung toward us and slammed with a jangling crash. Then we were swinging sickeningly. A moment later, we felt a jolt from Anna and above us, and the swinging gradually diminished. And as we stumbled, there were the eyes again, hanging fascinated on the other side of the grid. Get us out of this thing, Laura, like you got us off the roof. I can't stand those eyes watching me. There wasn't much point in leaving the cage now, with their full attention upon us, but I knew how he felt. Being trapped and closely observed was so unbearable that rationality vanished. All that mattered was getting away. I grabbed Pete's hand and we stumbled across the cage to another wall of grid. I tried to move Anna over the wall, then Kata, but it wasn't like moving over a wall back home. Anna and Kata over this wall was only more solid grid. There was no way out. If I'd been thinking, I would have known it without even trying. I let go of Pete's hand and sank to my knees. Now what's the matter with you? I told you to get us out of here. It's no use, Pete. Suddenly I felt too exhausted to even be angry at his stupid hostility. We can't go out into force space to get out of this thing because we're already in force space. This isn't just a regular box, it's a hypercube like the lantern. Every surface of this thing is a solid cube. Hungry, little ones hungry? Yes, here's something for you. The front wall of the grid changed shape, squeezing off to one side. 4 gnarled balls floated into the cage, dropped a couple of objects, and the grid slammed shut again. I would never have imagined I could be hungry in a situation like this. On the other hand, who would ever imagined a situation like this? My appetite, as perverse and unpredictable as ever, asserted itself with full force. We had been through a lot since lunch, which seemed like days ago, and all I'd eaten then was ketchup anyway. Wonder what this is, I said, crawling toward one of the dropped objects, hoping it wasn't a slice of the head they'd been discussing earlier. I'm not touching it. It's probably poison, Pete said. Why would they want to poison us? They think we're cute. I gingerly poked the object. It wasn't anything's head. At least even force-based creatures probably wouldn't give their luscious delicacies to pets. It was crumbly and bland-smelling, like bread or cake. Gigigi had been smart enough, seeing how we were built to give us what must seem to her like very thin slivers. But it was still too thick in the Anna and Kata direction to go inside my body, which had no Anna and Kata to it after all. I had to peel off a thin strip with my fingernail. I lifted it to my mouth. Yes, little one. Go ahead, eat, eat. Little one needs some fattening up. But I paused, remembering the reversed ketchup. Was I reversed or not now? There was no way to tell. I had probably reversed back and forth dozens of times since leaving home. Being reversed wouldn't make any difference out here, logically. There might be other peculiarities to force-based food, but if so, I might as well find out now. Anyway, I was starving, and what did I have to lose? The stuff didn't seem unwholesome. It tasted a little like gingerbread. The most surprising thing about eating it was Gigi and Ramoon's reaction. Shrieks of laughter, like symphonies of revving motorcycles. Oh, did you see that? How darling, how sweet. Sensational. Do it again, little one. Eat more for us. Now what's the matter with them? Pete asked nervously. Who knows? But you might as well try some of this. Doesn't taste bad or make me feel weird. I peeled off another slice, and eating something might improve your mood. He looked doubtful, but took my advice. More peals of laughter, like armies of lovesick bullfrogs. Charming, charming, how delicate and amusing, utterly delightful, so engrossingly sensual, infinitely more entertaining than that stupid bat of yours. Watching Pete, I finally saw what it was they were exclaiming about. Since we were transparent, the chewing of the food and peristaltic action of the esophagus pushing it down into the stomach were all clearly visible. It didn't seem all that charming and amusing to me. Still, it was nice to know that they had a good-spirited side to their natures, that they were not complete ogres, that they had a sense of humor, however warped. It was even nice to know that we were not going to starve to death, and even though being lost in force space was the worst thing that had ever happened to me, I had to admit things could have been worse. We hadn't been eaten by a force-based lion or crushed to death by a force-based leaf fluttering down on us. We hadn't been rolled into tubes or folded into paper airplanes, as Omar had warned me so long ago. But why had Omar kept telling me that anyone who got caught in force space had to be killed? If it was true, there had to be a reason for it. Somehow I had the feeling that the reason was terribly obvious, but I didn't want to think about it now. Why do they keep laughing at us? Pete said. Why do they think we're funny? They like seeing the food going down inside us, that's all I said. You got any ideas why we seem to be able to pick up their thoughts? Mental telepathy? ESP? He suggested, as if they were the whole explanation. Sure, that's what it's called. But did it ever happen to you at home? No. Well, I think I have an idea. I launched into an explanation I had come up with. So many things were different here. It wasn't only force-based creatures' bodies that were more than ours. Their brains also had an added dimension that would certainly make their thought process a lot more complicated and powerful than anything we were used to. It only made sense that four-dimensional brains extending Anna and Kata would have telepathic abilities. Yeah, but how come we understand their language, Pete said. I almost wish we didn't. I don't think we do understand their language. How could we? It's not actual words we're picking up. What we're getting must just be their basic thoughts, and also their emotions, force-based emotions so specific and highly developed that to three-space creatures they seem like an actual language. Makes sense, Pete said, looking anxiously out of the cage. But it doesn't make me like it any better here. But I wonder if there's any way we could communicate with them, I said. I bet our thoughts are too weak and thin for them to notice. Do you know, Gigi, the most interesting thought has just occurred to me. Yes, Ramoon, look, aren't they sweet? But doesn't it strike you as odd, Gigi, that no one has ever before seen, not to mention even heard of, creatures such as this? Do you think there is some way we could communicate with them? Pete began to get excited. Maybe we could get them to take us home. I've got to get out of here, Laura. Do you think I like it here? Just try to calm down and listen to them. That's the only way we'll learn anything. And is it not also true that these could not possibly be the only two such creatures in existence? Nature does not work that way. There must be more of them somewhere, Gigi. Many more. Yes, there are, Pete shouted at them. We'll help you find them if you take us home. Be quiet, Pete. I'm sure they can't understand English. Many more, Ramoon? Do you really think we could find them? And at that moment, I knew the real reason Omar had been so reluctant to take me into force space, so careful never to be seen by force-based creatures, and I saw that a death penalty for being caught was not extreme at all. I remembered the analogy of a flat two-dimensional world, completely unaware of the three-dimensional world on either side of it, and completely vulnerable to it. If such a world existed, people in three space would be able to reach in and pluck creatures off the surface whenever they wished. They would also be able to do anything else they wanted, crush buildings, reshape countrysides, control events in any way that might amuse them. And the two space people could do nothing to prevent it, or to protect themselves. The creatures from the dimension above would have absolute power, and our world would be in exactly the same situation if these creatures ever found it. Perhaps we could, Gigi. Whether or not they can actually think, we might be able to find out where they come from. The rest of their species might even be hiding somewhere not far from here. Do you think that would be interesting? Imagine the possibilities. For the first time, I understood the inevitable and disastrous consequence of what I had done. Our situation was a lot worse than I had ever imagined. Somehow, three space had remained undiscovered all this time. But now, if we ever went back, we would be leading these force-based creatures right to our world, laying bare and exposing our homes to them. Did you hear that, Laura? They want to find out where we come from. They want to take us home. Maybe we can get them to do it right away. Pete grabbed my arm, his heart quickening, his aorta swelling as blood rushed eagerly to his brain. No, Pete, no! I squirmed miserably away from him. Pete had it all wrong. We couldn't let them take us home. We couldn't go home at all unless we could figure out how to get there without showing them the way. Because if they discovered our home, then it wouldn't be home anymore, ever again. And that's the end of chapter 12.